On today's episode of Kerbal Space Program, we're going to be tackling a few more missions in career mode. First off, let's look at our mission control and pick out a few more items here. I think we are ready to officially orbit Kerbin, so we will pick up that as our current mission. And let's just focus on getting in orbit. I think the next item I'm going to buy in our science tree here is general rocketry. I want to get these thumper solid fuel boosters, as well as a slightly larger fuel tank here, liquid fuel tank. So research that. That's all we can afford right now. Let's start building our rocket here. Alright, the Kerbals have assembled for the construction process. This is going to be a whole new rocket, so we're going to get our man pod in there. Mark 16 parachute. Popping on my radial chutes here, the drogue chutes. There we go. Gotta make sure these are separate so they don't deploy at the same time. Alright. Where's our heat shield? Heat shield, heat shield. There you go. 1.25. Alright. That's our return capsule, so Jeb can come back safely. Decoupler. Looking good. Let's put some fuel on this bad boy. We got 1, 2, 3. Maybe let's do 4 here. I'm gonna attach a swivel engine because it has that lovely vectoring. Reliant is a little bit lighter, but it does not have any vectoring, so it's a little harder to control. Now, let's check here. We have about 1900 meters per second of delta V. To get into orbit, we need about 3,400 meters per second of delta V. So, I'm going to actually add another stage here of liquid fuel to give us a bit more control over this rocket, so it doesn't spiral into oblivion and not reach our destination here. Drag it up a bit. Let's pop on a few more of these fuel tanks. I think 4 more should be good. Okay. And another swivel engine. There we go. So we're up to about 2,800 meters per second. Great way to get the last little bit that we need is to add on yet another decoupler. And we can throw a thumper engine on the bottom of this. Now you see here we have an issue. Our craft is too large and too tall for our current dimensions. So let's save this temporarily. We'll call this first orbiter. We'll save it. We need to leave and see if we can afford an upgrade to the vehicle assembly building. Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually going to be the launch pad that we need to upgrade for the size of the vehicle, so we'll upgrade that. Okay, go back in here. And look at that. We are now within tolerance. And we have just enough delta V, a little under 3,400, but I think that should be enough to get us up into orbit. We'll see. Let's add some fins on the bottom here so we have a little bit of stability. Now, this is a little unprecedented, but I'm going to actually add fins a little bit further up here as well, because when we ditch that first stage, we're still going to be in a little bit of atmosphere, so we'll want some more of that aerodynamic control. Make sure Jeb's on board. Jebediah is ready to proceed with the mission. One more save for good measure, and let's go to the launch pad. Alrighty, everything should be set. I'm going to hit T to activate SAS. We're going to also hit Z to throttle all the way up when we start lighting our liquid engines. That'll help out. Now let's go ahead and hit spacebar. I'm going to immediately start going a little bit to the east to start a gravity turn, because that solid engine is going to get us going pretty fast here. Just enough thrust to get us off the launch pad. You'll see on my nav ball in the bottom middle there, I'm tilting just slightly to the east. I don't want to go too far because we're not going quite fast enough yet. So once we get past about 100 meters per second, I can start turning a little bit more aggressively. Right now the craft is turning all on its own. I just gave it a little tick to the right there. I'm actually trying to keep it more vertical now. I don't want to go in too far to the east. Trying to hold it up vertical. Alright, we're about ready to ditch our first stage here, switching right over to the liquid in the second stage. go. Alright, we got a bit more control here. I'm pointed a little bit over far here. I'm going to click on this maneuver mode. That'll give me an idea of my apoapsis. So, keep going up here, head towards the east. The reason we launch to the east is because that's the direction we are orbiting in. So we pick up a little bit of free speed that way. It's just a little bit more efficient to launch. Alright, apoapsis is increasing here, looking nice. Now again, I'm at 10,000 meters and climbing. I don't want my speed to get too much faster at this point. But we're going to let it go until the stage is burnt out. I want that apoapsis to get at least, well, 70,000 is the atmosphere, so at least 80 kilometers would be ideal. About to drop the second stage now. Ooh, there we go. Second stage is dropped, and we are still going up. You can see I'm starting to get a little bit of that aerodynamic drag, but we're high enough in the atmosphere, so it shouldn't be too bad on our speed. Picking up a lot more surface speed. Apoapsis in the very bottom left there. That's the furthest we are from the planet, basically. We want that to get up to about 80 to 90 if possible. And then I will cut the engine. That looks good. I'm going to cut the engine here. So we need the rest of that to basically circularize our orbit when we get up into space. I'm going to point our nav ball prograde in the middle of that circular yellow object. That's our prograde marker there. That way I'm pointed directly into our direction that we're traveling. Checking the map now. It's looking pretty good. Once we leave the atmosphere, I'm going to line this up and basically try to circularize our orbit by pointing directly to the eastern horizon, or in this case, straight on that line on our nav ball there. So we're going to let this get all the way out of the atmosphere. Got another milestone. Our land distance, as well as our second land distance record of 100 kilometers. You can see based on the top, we are now just about to get out of the atmosphere. And you'll notice that instead of surface speed, we are showing orbital speed. Our spacey music kicking in. We'll go a little bit below this horizon to sort of circularize, and we want this to pretty much get to about 2,000 meters a second. Once you get to that speed, you will be essentially fast enough to orbit Kerbin. So I'm trying to keep this right on the edge here. You'll see I'm keeping my apoapsis under control there. Okay, now it's going to 106 kilometers. That means I'm gaining quite a bit of height. We've nearly circularized. I'm going to actually let the spaceship go a little bit further out until I am at 106 kilometers, and we'll finish our circularization here. If we get too far away from the planet, we won't be able to come back to deorbit and land, so that would be bad. Alrighty. Coming up on that 106 kilometer mark right about now. Looking good. Don't forget you have an electric charge that is currently being depleted. Later on in the game, we'll unlock solar panels and batteries, but right now all we have is the 50 units that are saved in the capsule itself. It does get recharged when you use liquid fuel, but right now it's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and hit this thrust one more time to circularize. That looks about circular. Yeah, we went a little far out, but that's okay. And there we are. Circularized, just as the sun begins to set on our orbit here. You can check our contract parameter here. We have, in fact, achieved orbit. We didn't tell the recovery team that you'd be staying in space, so they're still looking. Great job. Also, that counts as a milestone, so a little bit of extra cash for the program there. Jebediah is happy as a clam right now. And we have a nice little shot of the moon in the distance. Okay, if we look at our bottom left here in this orange area, you'll see 464 meters per second. That is our remaining delta V. That's the rest of the fuel that we have in these fuel tanks. So, How do we deorbit? Well, we're going to wait until we are more or less on the opposite side of the planet from our space center. That way we can try to deorbit as close as possible. I'll show you how this works. I'm going to fast forward, wait till our ship is coming around the other side, because we're going to do a retrograde burn. That looks about right. So for a retrograde burn, we're going to turn the ship pointing backwards. So in this icon, it's the little X, the yellow X. There we go. And we'll start firing off the engine. We're looking now at periapsis, which is the lower part of our orbit, the part that is closer to the planet. To deorbit any craft around Kerbin, it's pretty easy if you just get that periapsis down to about 40 to 45 kilometers. So I'm just using shift to throttle up very gently. It does not take a lot of fuel to deorbit here. And now we'll see that drop down to about 45 to 40. I'll say 42 there looks good. And you'll notice that that's deorbiting just over the Kerbal Space Center. Now that doesn't mean we're going to land directly on top of it, but we'll start to catch the atmosphere and we'll land fairly close. So, at this point we can accelerate time just a little bit to come around. And if you're newer to playing the game, this is not a bad time to throw on a quick save. So, let me actually go to normal speed here, hit F5 to do a quick save. Anytime you are interacting with an atmosphere, quick save is your friend. Alright, so time warping here. Also, your time warp will automatically slow down when you start entering the atmosphere, which we have just begun. What I like to do at this point is also point retrograde to make sure my craft is coming in tail first. The engine is better at taking some of that heat. Also, if you realize you're coming in a little too fast, you could burn off some more of your remaining fuel to slow down your speed here. In this case, we're looking pretty good. I'm going to burn a little bit more fuel just to hopefully make us come in a bit closer. All right. Now again, I've already quick saved. You want to quick save when you're in space. Do not quick save in the atmosphere if you can avoid it, because the interaction will create a lot of issues for you on a quick load. So whenever possible, quick save in space. Also now I'm going to hit spacebar to separate. Now since we've deorbited, this whole section that I just ejected will still also go into the atmosphere, so we don't have to worry about that floating around in space. You gotta avoid that Kessler syndrome wherever possible. Okay, lining up the craft here retrograde. And now we play the waiting game. You can actually use a little bit of physical time warp here. And the way I'm adjusting my time warp is by hitting the period keys for physics. And the period key will increase it. The comma key will decrease that time warp. So you don't have to click up here in the top left. All right, once you start getting a little lower in the atmosphere though, it's a good idea to keep your time warp off initially just to make sure your craft can handle the entry appropriately. Sometimes it'll cause a bit of a glitch. You can also turn off SAS so that the craft will naturally align itself. As long as it's one of these teardrop command pods, it should keep itself aligned if it's coming in at a decent speed. There in the distance, you can actually see a faint glimmer of the lights from the Kerbal Space Center just above my mouse there. So we're ideally trying to land very close to it so we can recover maximum funds from the parts that come back. Which in this case is just the command pod, but something's better than nothing. Speed up a bit here. Jebediah's enjoying the flames outside. You can see our orbital speed here is dropping dramatically. We're now flying directly over Kerbal Space Center. Speed's still decreasing at a good clip. Probably can't see it at this point because it's entering the dark side of the planet. Right, and then once we get below about 1,000 meters per second, the aerodynamic forces won't be quite as intense. You can hear that noise kind of pitch down a little bit. Now what I am doing is looking at this icon here. These are my drogue chutes, the 2 drogue chutes that I attached. I'm going to wait till this turns gray so that it's safe to deploy those chutes. There we go. So next where it deploys those guys, which will slow me down even more. And once you get below about 260 meters per second, it will be safe generally to deploy your main chute. So let's do that now. There we go. Okay. So all 3 of these chutes have yet to fully deploy, but they're still acting as a bit of a drogue to gradually just slow down the craft, so Jebediah doesn't get too much whiplash. I'm going to do another time acceleration here, just to get us a bit closer to the ground. Because drogue chutes shouldn't fully deploy till about 2,000 meters. Coming on down. There we go. Drogue chutes are open. Speed it up one more time. And before we actually hit the water, I'm going to right-click our capsule and do a crew report, because we haven't technically gotten science from flying over Kerbin's water. So we'll keep that experiment. Get a little bit of quick cheeky science there. Alright, fast forwarding again. I'm going to bring this back down to normal speed. Probably about 50 meters off the deck, just to make sure there's no issues with impacting the water. Up, we'll go back to normal speed. See just how fast 6 meters per second really is. There we go. Another milestone. It's our first recovery of an orbital mission, so a little bit more cashola from that. Go up to the middle and recover our vessel. And there we have it. Jebediah has completed his first orbital mission. We landed just under 60 kilometers from the KSC, not too shabby. And Jebediah has advanced to level 1. So he has a little bit more capability as a pilot, which is always good. Alright. Let's check our research and development building. We can now afford some more upgrades. Let's get this stability because we want this radial decoupler. This is going to be great for attaching things like solid boosters to help get larger ships up in orbit, and a nose cone, which is also good for aerodynamics. Can't afford anything from the next tier yet. That's okay, we will soon. Let's check our mission control here. Alright, we've got a few more options. Again, I'm not a big fan of observational surveys, so we'll ignore those for the time being. Can test the parachute. The issue there is we need to be flying at that altitude and at that speed, which means there's a good chance we'll have to do a launch specifically for this test. But why not? It's worth a little bit of science and a little bit of money, and it should be a pretty cheap craft to create, so we'll do that. We also have testing the hammer. This is another speed and altitude dependent. The issue here is we have to bring a solid fuel booster all the way up to this altitude before we activate it. So on that front, I'm probably not going to worry about this particular contract. Testing this swivel engine is at a very high altitude, 240 to 250 kilometers, suborbital trajectory. That's going to be a very fast and furious mission, but it's a little bit easier to accomplish, so let's try this one out. Now, I know you all probably see this Explore the Mun. This is asking us to fly by the Mun, gather scientific data, and return to Kerbin from a flyby of the Mun. That's going to be a big one, so we'll hold off on accepting this mission for now. What I'm going to do first is one more contract mission here. We'll create a new craft. This one we'll use our Mark 1 command pod. Their standard parachute setup. Put this on top. Mark 12s on the sides. We'll split these out so they're on different stages. Now here we can check our contract. This wants a Mark II radio parachute to be tested at an altitude of 5 to 9,000 meters, a speed of 150 to 210. So, the Mark IIs are these bigger ones here. What I'm going to do is add a decoupler. I'm not going to worry about a heat shield because we're not going to go high enough to need it just yet. Fuel tanks, we're going to use liquid fuel because we need to be able to control our speed for this particular test. And a swivel engine for the control. And last but not least, we need the testing item itself, the Mark II radio parachutes. Put these there. And that's pretty much all we need for this test. Now let me move the engine down. So it's the first stage. Move the Mark II chutes down to their own stage. And then we'll move the decoupler down below the last two parachute stages. We'll call this the chute tester. Alright. Check to see if Jeb's on board. He is. We're good. Let's launch this sucker. Again, I'm going to click on my contracts panel to keep that open. We are looking for this second contract here. We want to check mark next to all three of these flying 5 to 9,000 and 150 meters per second to 210 meters per second. At that point, let's check the note. We have to activate the part through staging, which means that we'll need to hit spacebar to activate these chutes. But first, we'll hit spacebar to activate our main engine. I've got the throttle at about 50%, and we'll adjust speed as we get closer to that altitude target. Alright. Pretty good so far. I'm going to go a little bit over to the right here so that when we ditch this fuel tank, it's not going to hit the Kerbal Space Center. I'm going to throttle down a little bit because we are already getting close to 150 meters per second. And we still have to get a little bit higher up for this test to work. Keep throttling. Okay, now I want to keep my speed a little consistent, but increasing up to that 150 meters per second mark. Again, I'm keeping my eyes mainly on this, and also on my speed in the bottom middle here. And as soon as we get to 5,000, we'll make sure the speed's appropriate. We'll hit spacebar to test these chutes. Okay, throttling down a little bit. We'll keep that speed consistent. Looking good. Let's hit X to cut, and then we'll also hit spacebar at the same time. Test those chutes, and look at that. We're good to go. So this juncture, I realized we can actually save a little bit more money if we hang on to this liquid fuel stage. So instead of decoupling here, you can actually rearrange your staging mid-flight. How do we do that? Well, you just click and hold on this orange tab, and you can drag this decoupler to the top. Now when I hit space, the next thing to deploy will be the drogue chutes. So this will slow us down even more. And finally, one more spacebar will deploy our main chute. Now for this fall to work properly, we want to be slowed down to about 6 to 10 meters per second of surface speed. So we'll see how much these chutes are able to slow us down, and whether or not we need to cut this lower stage. Speeding up time just a little bit. And there we go. All the parachutes are out. We're going just at 6 meters per second, which is safe enough to land without any of our engines exploding, meaning we'll recover a little bit more cash for bringing back more parts to the Kerbal Space Center. Waiting for splashdown now. You'll recall Jebediah already got his atmospheric crew report over water, so I'm not worrying about that this go around. Okay, Let's go back to normal speed. And we are splashing down. Yet again. Excellent. Cover the vessel. No extra experience for Jeb, but we've got all of our parts pretty much refunded at 98% value. And we've completed our contract. As you can see here, it's another 28 grand. Our budget currently is about 470 grand, which means we can actually afford to do some more upgrades. One upgrade that's good to get pretty early on is if you right-click on Mission Control, you can upgrade that for 75,000, and that's going to give you the option to pick up more missions. More missions means instead of 2 at a time, we can now grab 7 contracts at a time, which will be great for multitasking and knocking out several birds with one stone. So let's say you want to do a moon mission. You can pick up a mission for gathering data from the moon. You can pick up a mission for landing on the moon. You can pick up a mission for orbiting the moon, or maybe even taking a tourist to the moon, and do those all in one mission instead of kind of daisy chaining like we've been doing one mission at a time.